So welcome everybody to the session. I hope all of you can see and hear me clearly. This is a continuation of a series of a certain series of classes where we help people as to how do we handle different RC types of questions. Yesterday also we met at the same time 9 o'clock, and if you remember we discussed different approaches, as in not different but one approach as to what is the ideal way to handle RCs as far as the exam CAT is concerned. So right at the outset, before I begin, let me quickly ask everybody to confirm if you can see and hear me clearly. If things are fine, we will continue. In any case, should be fine, should not be much of a problem. As of now, I can see that nobody is live. In any case, let's see. So as I was telling you earlier, we will look at how do we handle different types of questions, difficult questions rather. So how do we do it? Let's come to it later on. But first, let's understand this whole concept behind the February Mela. If you enroll, if you subscribe, you basically can get flat 50,000 or 50% off, sorry, on Gradeup Super, and you use the code that is given there. It's only for it's till today only, right? And if you notice, this will enable you to get access to all the courses which are connected to the exams which you are preparing for. So it's not like you have to buy different courses or different modules, right? If you subscribe to Gradeup Super, you will automatically get access to all the different courses which are connected to the field that you're preparing for. Now let me quickly begin by repeating what I did yesterday. This is something which I did yesterday only. If you remember, I was discussing yesterday how do we approach, right? So how do we approach RCs? That is what we discussed. Let me just do a quick recap. The first thing we should do is scan the questions. When I say scan the questions, it basically means just looking at the questions before reading the passage. And at this stage, we should avoid reading the answer options. So these two things go hand in hand. So when I scan the questions, I should avoid reading the answer options. What is the aim? The aim is to decide what kind of questions are asked, what kind of a level of focus do I need to put in, what kind of understanding do I need to put in. That is basically the first stage. The second stage, and the most important one, is when you read the passage. And by the way, let me tell you, since you have scanned the questions, when you read the passage, you will be slightly at an advantage because you know, okay, out of the 4 questions, some of the questions are like this, some are like that, so you will know how to approach the passage, right? So having done this and reading the passage, it should be something like, if it is like 500-600 words, you should be able to read that passage in around 3 minutes. Not more than that, right? So 3-4 minutes in reading the passage, scanning the questions another 40 seconds, right? And the third stage is when you start answering the questions. When you start answering the questions, right, remember one very important, refer to the relevant part if required. When I say relevant part, I do not mean the answer is going to be directly given always. In some cases, the answer might be given, right? But there are certain questions where we feel, okay, I know that this point is connected to the second paragraph, right? But I do not remember it exactly. So what do? There's nothing wrong in going back 20 seconds, taking 20 seconds and confirming the answer. So if I refer to the relevant part, it will help me increase my accuracy. And if you notice, it is something which should be done only if required. If I already know, if I'm already familiar with the answer option, if I'm already familiar with the points, there's no need to refer. But if required, refer. There's nothing wrong in in referring to it, right? And last but not the least, eliminate the answer options. Elimination of the answer options will ensure that confusion is reduced, right? If confusion is reduced, it will definitely it will boost your confidence. It will actually lead to scoring of more marks also, right? And when you eliminate options, just remember one thing, that is, even if an answer option is partially correct, it cannot be correct, right? What I'm telling you is, if there is even a single word which is wrong, which is not accurate, which is not proper, that can lead us to eliminate the options. Out of 4 options, if you eliminate one, it becomes much more easier to handle the other options. So this is what we discussed yesterday, approach. Now today we will look at how do we handle difficult types of questions. The most difficult types of questions are the questions which have got to do with something which is not clearly mentioned, right? And there is nothing like a single magic formula. What I will do is I will show you a passage, and once we discuss the passage, I'll also show you question by question what is the best way to do it, right? So let's without much of a waste of time, let's look at the passage. Let me just take you through. This is the first slide. The second, this is so there are just 2 slides, and look at the first question. Which of the following best reflects the author's argument? Such a question is about the overall theme, is about the overall approach of the passage, which means it is not going to be easy. I will have to look at, okay, what does the author want to say. In such a case, when you are looking at the overall argument, it is best to focus on the beginning and the end. Again, when I say focusing on the beginning and the end, it does not mean forget everything in between. I should read, of course, with equal attention, but focus on the first and on the beginning and the last part, right? So just 2 slides. Let's quickly read this and try to answer the question. Let's see. Right, I hope, and if you notice, right, if you come across any word which you do not know, you can ask me. Otherwise, try to guess from the context. So Garima is present, right? So nobody else is live here, right? So Garima, good afternoon, good evening rather. I hope you can see and hear me clearly, and just take some time to read this passage. And when we answer the questions, we will get to know exactly what we need to do to handle questions like these. And reading something like this should take you not more than 1 minute, maximum 1 minute. Atia, why is this class not mentioned in the daily timetable? I'm not really sure about it, Bhatia, but let me tell you, this is the second class, right? I started yesterday. It's supposed to be something like an open session. Where tomorrow I will start discussing actual questions from CAT, right? So it's more or less like a certain an attempt at helping people as to how do we handle passages better, right? So I'm not really sure about the daily timetable because different batches have different timetables. This is more like an open class where everybody can come and make the most of it. I hope you are reading it. Let's see. So good evening, Sahil. Good evening, Vicky. Right. I hope you're just in time. You just missed the first part. The first part of the class was where we were discussing, how do we approach, right? Today we are focusing on how do we handle difficult question types. And the best way to handle difficult question types is to try it out, right? And by the way, as I was telling you, eliminate the wrong answer options, right? We will come to that when we see, right? And by the way, the first question which I showed you was about the overall argument. So overall argument question is not easy because you have to keep the whole thing in mind. So this requires utmost amount of understanding and comprehension, right? So I hope all of you can read it. All of you are reading it. Just indicate when you are through. Whenever you are through, just point out whether you are through or not. I hope all of you are reading it. What does the passage say? Well, if you notice, the first paragraph is about how the internal combustion engine is going to end, right? So, and what is going to actually take its place? It's going to be, the place of this is going to be taken by the electric car, right? Now, and if you notice, towards the last part, some of it reflects the remarkable abilities of Elon Musk, the company's founder, and whatever, right? So he is selling out the dream that the world wants to believe in. What kind of a dream? So it's about the kind of the idea that is actually selling, right? So this may be the most important factor in the story. The private car is a device of practical. So if you notice, the private car at the same time a theater for myths of unattainable self-fulfillment. So what is it that the world wants to believe in? Everybody wants the car, the mode of transport to be private. You want it to be, you want it to be like something which is at your own beck and call. You want to have complete control over it. But he's saying that at the same time, it's a myth of unattainable self-fulfillment. So straight away, we sense that the author is a little bit skeptical about this idea. Right. Then he starts pointing out, okay, the one thing you will never see in a car advertisement is traffic. He's pointing out the negatives. Right. What is actually sold to us is, okay, you will have the whole thing in your control. You can decide what you want. You can travel at your own convenience. But he's saying this is unattainable. It is almost like an impossible dream. And he tells you that the negatives are not basically highlighted when it comes to ads. I hope everybody is reading it carefully. Everybody has read it. Let's quickly, let's quickly move on to the next slide. If everybody has read it, let's move on to the next slide. I think everybody has. Right, so this is the next slide. Let's quickly go through it, right? And if you find any problems, if you come across any discrepancy, if you come across, not a discrepancy as such, but if you come across any problems, just point it out so we can discuss it, point it out. So if you read the first few lines, the sleek and swift electric car is the most contemporary fantasy. It's so the key word is fantasy. It's a fantasy of autonomy and power. You want to be self-sufficient. You want to be autonomous, but it's almost like a fantasy. Fantasy is something which is difficult to realize, right? So he's now, if you notice, he's telling you here the disadvantages. It might do as much damage as the fossil fuel engine cars in the last centuries, right? He also tells you that, okay, it would pollute far less than the previous types of cars, right? But the focus would be shifted to something else. Instead of oil, we would start looking at the rarest materials for batteries, which would make undeserving. So now oils are sought after. Now after that, after the electric car becomes very much in vogue, what will become sought after is nothing else but the batteries, the rarest materials which are used to make batteries. So this is the author is being skeptical. In fact, if you notice in this paragraph, he even points out something like, cars that were as silent as bicycles would still be as dangerous as they are now to anyone they hit. So in a slightly in a humorous way, he is pointing out if it is very silent, it can become very dangerous also. Right, everybody, I hope is reading. The dream goes further than that. The key is the word dream. It's almost like something that is sold to you that is impossible to meet. Right. So the electric cars of the future will be so thoroughly equipped that they will never hit anyone. So the steering wheel, it's almost like he is telling you it is too perfect to be believed. Right. So this is where the fantasy of autonomy comes full circle. Then he points out a problem. What is the problem? The logical outcome is that they will become cars which need no owner. Now, if you notice one thing, it is ironical because you have your own car which you can take out at your own convenience and all that. But if it is something which can drive without a driver, then there's no owner required also. You simply require to summon a car. So this is where you need to have taxes. So the future towards this is it's something like Uber. So the ultimate development of the private car will be to reinvent public transport. So in a way, when you go looking after autonomy, in a way, without knowing it, you are pushing for public transport, because if you do not drive a car, you do not need to own it. You just have to call it when you require it. But that's exactly what public transport does. So that is what the author says. Right. So traffic jams will be abolished only when the private car becomes a public utility. So what will happen to our fantasy of independence will also. So the idea is, what is actually telling you here is, the fantasy which is sold to us of autonomy, eventually it leads to something like a model for the public transport. So what was the dream after all? It was almost like an imperfect, something which is like a fantasy which was sold to us. Everybody prepared, everybody ran after it, but it is not realistic. So that is the case, right? Now let's try to answer the question. I would require you to attempt the answers properly. If you notice, this is something which, I mean, if I can tell you the answers very easily, but the main challenge is when you answer it on your own. अपने आप खुद से जब अब आप आंसर करोगे तो गलतियां हो सकते हैं. इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग क्या है, गलती अगर हो गई तो when you realize that अच्छा मैंने यहाँ गलती की थी, it basically means you have improved. So that is what we need to do. So which of the following statements best reflects the author's argument? Right, so what was the argument? What is the author's argument? Right, let's eliminate options and see. A, hybrid and electric vehicles signal the end of the age of internal combustion engines. Right, is that the author's argument? He tells you this in the beginning, but he says that what is actually sold to us, what we are made to believe, is almost like we are running round and round. We want to be we want to be extremely self-independent when it comes to traveling, but eventually that leads us to having a certain system where we have to have something similar to public transport, right? So eliminate A, because this is too little of a scope. Elon Musk is a remarkably gifted salesman. It's only just one point. It is not the author's main argument. So B is not wrong, but it's not the author's main argument. Now, most of you, I do not know how many are still, attempting the question, but the best answer is C. The private car. The key here is the private. I mean, something which you own autonomously. It is unreal. It is something which it's a myth. Right, you cannot have it, because eventually when you push too much towards having a private car which you do not drive, it means you do not own it. Therefore, you are looking for something similar to public transport. So the best answer is C. Right, everybody is clear with this, I hope. All clear, no response. Anybody? I hope everybody is is clear about this point. So the best answer is C. Right, and as we go ahead, let me tell you one thing. Difficult question types are questions like this, where you do not find the answer directly stated. You have to basically do two things. Number one is you have to depend on what the passage says, and second, eliminate the wrong answer options. Right. Let's try the next question. This question I will wait for for everybody to respond, and we will move on. Right, and if you read the answer options, the author points out all of the following about electric cars except. So the word except is the key thing here. You're going to look at something which the author does not point out, especially keeping in mind electric cars. Right. Okay, if I look at A, their reliance on rare materials for batteries will support despotic rule. If you notice, if you remember the point, you will remember that this is something which he mentions exactly here. That is, instead of oil reserves, the rarest materials would make undeserving despots and the dynasties fantastically rich. Right. So A is something which cannot be the answer. Right. Okay. Now, Sahil and Yash thinks the answer is C. Okay. They will reduce air and noise pollution. He says that they will be silent. He says they will not, they will, they will definitely increase, they will not definitely lead to a reduction in the noise and air pollution. Do I need to point out? I hope I do not need to. Okay, Yash and Sahil think the answer is C. They will not decrease the number of traffic jams, right? Does he say that they will? What does he say about traffic jams? Let's see. Just look at the line, which is very important here, right? I will point out the idea, right? The private car is at the same time it's a theater of unattainable self-fulfillment, right? The one thing you will never see in a car advertisement is traffic, even though it's the element which drivers spend their lives, right? So in any case, what he's telling you is that the advertisements that are coming out about the new car, they never address the topic of traffic jams, right? Which means traffic jams is something which they sideline, which also indicates that they are almost, pointing out the fact that they're almost highlighting that traffic jams are still going to be there. I mean, nobody addresses it because it's an ugly truth, right? The key to the answer is something which we find here. So is the answer C? The answer is D. They will ultimately undermine rather than further driver autonomy. Remember the argument which the author made was, eventually, I mean, in the beginning, it looks like we have our own car. You can do whatever you like with it. So, I mean, you can summon it at your own convenience. But if you do not drive it, you do not need to own it also, which means why should I keep something which I do not use, use every time? I will call it whenever I require. That is public transport. So, in a way, this quest for autonomy is undermining the quest itself. So the best answer is D, right? So Sahil and Yash, I hope you have understood the point, right? If you have any problems, you can quickly point out. I hope things are clear, right? I agree that C is something which is not very easy, and I just pointed out one place where he says all these advertisements are silent about the traffic jams, which means it's an ugly truth which they do not address. That means it is not likely to be reduced. So that is basically why C cannot be the answer. The best answer is D. I hope everybody understood, everybody got the point. I hope. Let's try the next question. Next question is, what is the main reason for Tesla's remarkable sales? What is the main reason for Tesla's remarkable sales? I hope Sahil and Yash, right? So yes, such questions will come in the exams. This is in fact very close to what happens, right? Tomorrow and day after tomorrow, I will discuss with you at the same time questions which are taken from actual RCs, actual passages in the exam. So you will notice that out of 4, you can very easily eliminate 2 options, but one will be very confusing. So that is what we have to be looking at. So what is the main reason for Tesla's remarkable sales, right? Yash thinks the answer is B. Okay, question is about the remarkable sales. So why is it that it is, why is it that Tesla is selling quite well, right? The answer to this question is something which you can find. If you want, I will point out, right? So the company's founder, as a salesman, is able to get the most out of his, and he's selling a dream that the world wants to believe in. What is that dream? The dream of the dream of autonomy, when you become very autonomous, right? So but then he says it's a theater for myths of unattainable self-fulfillment. So he is selling you a dream, right, which is impossible, but you believe in it. So that is basically what is the main point. Let's see. So what is the answer? Sahil thinks the answer is B. Let me quickly point out the best answer to this question is D. People believe in the autonomy represented by private cars. People believe in it, though it is not real. Eventually, this autonomy is going to lead you to nothing else but public transport. But for the time being, people believe in it. The parts which I showed you underlined will actually confirm the answer, right? I hope everybody is clear with this, right? So these questions, as I was telling you right in the beginning, these are questions which are not easy. So here you will have to be at your utmost, utmost concentration, your utmost sharp, right? Your sharpness would be at this utmost. So that is what is the case. All clear, I hope. Shall we try the next question? Let's see. The author comes to the conclusion that, so again, what does the author, say? If you notice, the main argument is everybody, the Tesla is doing a good job of selling the dream of autonomy, but eventually this autonomy which they're selling is going to lead to public transport only. So that is the author's main conclusion, right? So what is the best answer? I have by the way, I've given everybody almost like an indirect clue as to what should be the answer. His conclusion is very simply that the dream that they are actually selling is not real. Eventually, you have to depend on public transport. I hope all of you are, all of you are getting it. So, the author comes to the conclusion. So, what is the conclusion that the author comes to, right? So, let's see. Yes, thank you. I'm trying my best to make it as clear as possible to everybody, right? So, what should be the best answer, right? Best answer, if you notice, I have already, given you the clue. The best answer is C, right? The whole argument was this, that they sell as a dream of you will be self-independent, you will be autonomous, but eventually, if you're not going to drive the car, you do not need to own it. So eventually you are going to have a taxi, right? So that is the answer, right? So everybody is clear, I hope, with this, right? So everybody understands the point. Well and good. So let's try another question and let's see how it works out. In the paragraphs 5 and 6, okay, forget the paragraph. The author provides the example of Uber. So again, something which is connected to a specific part. Why does the author give the example of Uber? So why does the author give the example of Uber? So where does he give the example of Uber? So we will see, right? So if you want, I will show you that part. He gives you the example of Uber here, somewhere like here, right? Dekho. He gives you that, okay, again, related to the main point only, the fantasy of autonomy comes full circle. You are dreaming of autonomy, but the point is that if you really want it to be like this, then you will, this is towards the future towards which Uber is working. The ultimate development of the private car will be to reinvent public transport. So he points out, he gives this point to, he gives this example to point out the fact. Which point? Let's see, let's try to understand, right? Let's try to eliminate the options and see, right? If you notice the line which I underlined, if you read that, you will be very easily able to answer. So yes, now in the future, the private car will be transformed into a form of public transport, right? In the future, so the best answer is C, right? Okay, now yes, just one thing. Is he comparing Uber with Tesla sales? No, Uber is something else. It is something which provides taxi services, right? Tesla sells you cars, right? Focus on this part. He's telling you, right? Just remember this part which I read. The future is towards what Uber is working. The ultimate development of the private car will be to reinvent public transport. So eventually, while pushing for private cars, you are basically promoting, you are running towards public transport. Everybody got the point, I hope, right? So all got it, everybody got the point, I think, right? And if you like the session, do not forget to like it, comment on it. If you want to ask any question, share it and help as many people as possible. Try to help people. Try to spread the word around. If something good is happening, we should actually share it with everybody, right? Next question is, why does the author mention electrically powered bicycles to argue? Remember, this was in the last part. He says, okay, you push for cars. I'll show you that part. He was doing it more in sarcasm, more in humor than anything else, right? He says, okay, if you own a car, if you do not need to drive a car, you do not need to own it, right? So eventually traffic jams will be abolished only when the private car becomes a public utility, right? So then what will happen to our fantasy of independence? We will all have to take electrically powered bicycles. So what he's doing here is he is trying to cut a joke. He is humorous, right? So Our fantasies of independence, fantasies of autonomy, it became something which is which is more like an unattainable dream. So eventually, what do we have to do? We have to look for electric powered bicycles. So in a way, he's joking. He's half joking here. So what would be the best answer? Take some time to answer, and then we will see how it is like, right? So I'll show you the answer very clearly. He is trying to be he's trying to be humorous, right? So what does he say? The best answer is this: our fantasies of autonomy might unexpectedly require us to consider electric bicycles. That is what he was telling you. Remember the part which I highlighted? So that was the part which was the answer. Everybody is clear with this, I hope, right? So with that, we come to the end of the session. I hope all of you understood. If you like the session, definitely you should like it and share it among friends. Tomorrow again, we will meet at the same time. I will pick up an actual cat passage and we will see how difficult or how easy it is. And accordingly, we will try to work our way around it. Right. And of course, while attempting those passages, we will definitely be able to understand how how to approach passages, right? And before I move ahead, let me quickly tell you about the pricing. You can see the pricing for the February Mela 12 months subscription. The final price is this: 18 month subscription. See the final price. The second EMI is just ₹1. So the EMI option is something which you have to definitely you have to avail of, right? So what are the benefits of Gradeup subscribing to Gradeup Super? The benefits are very simple. You have access to all the running and upcoming courses. Meaning, if you subscribe now, right, there might be a course which starts tomorrow and which will help you for SNAP. You can get access to that also. So you do not need to buy separately. For example, all these exams we might have separate courses, so you do not need to buy everything. So you do not need to purchase separate courses. You simply have to look at subscription, right? So the lowest price ever, something all of you would know, right? CAT 2020 with 21, there's a full course. The enrollment has started. The features are 300 plus live interactive classes. There will be 200 plus PDFs, right? There will be 7,000 practice questions. There will be mock tests, right? 80 plus, right? And these are the faculty who will be taking your classes. You can see the score which they have made, which they have got in their own fields. They are experts in their own fields with impeccable experience and knowledge, right? So these are the faculty who will be taking your classes. So with that, I come to the end of the session. I will meet you again tomorrow, same time, 9 o'clock, and we will discuss passages, right? Passages which have actually been taken from CAT, right? So that is it, everybody. I hope everybody learned from it. So we will end it here. Tomorrow again, I'm telling you, we will meet at the same time and we will discuss some more passages. So good night, everybody. Have a nice day.